My fellow parents, I'm so glad you're joining us. I'm so glad you're joining us for today's special episode because today we are going to talk about something that we all relate with. We are going to talk about a place we've all been to, a place in our minds, a dark place, a lonely place, a place of when we go there, we feel really discouraged. We feel hopeless. We feel like, oh, I can't take this anymore. We're going to go to that place, Jordan. We're going to give you tips. We're going to give you tools. We're going to give you inspiration and encouragement and laughter. We're going to give you wisdom and care and love. Because, Jordan, we've all been in that place of feeling hopeless or overwhelmed or just so discouraged, man, right? We've all been there.
We've all been there. That hole that we somehow got in, we can't get out. Yeah. We can't even see the light of day. It's just depressing. It's gloomy. And we just are like, is this it? Is this what life is supposed to be about? Right? And you look around. I mean, I'm getting to that point where I'm like, no wonder people have midlife crises. I mean, my goodness gracious, there's so much weighing down on us. And we, as a kid, have all these hopes ourselves. And then we get older and then our life path takes some kind of track that maybe we didn't think we would take. And we look back and we're like, what? Why am I here right now? And then, of course, then we have a family, we have kids, and we're still trying to fix ourselves maybe from that turn we took that we weren't supposed to take. But now we've got other people's lives on this trail with us. The old school Oregon Trail, right? You've got like all these things that are trying to attack you. You're going to die from dysentery. That is something everybody remembers, man. Dying from dysentery. It's the
Crossing
worst.
the river, man.
Not
Crossing
the way you want to go out.
Oregon Trail's a video game from like the late 80s. It was the original video game if you're really young.
So good. Everything wanted to kill you, though. I mean,
school. They let you play in school on an apple with green lights and a black. But yeah,
and I remember you used to go hunting, and that was like the best. Like, I'm gonna go get food for my family.
It was the
I'm
best.
gonna go shoot this rabbit.
Oh, it was the best. Oh, so this episode is not just to make you giggle and laugh about silly jokes. It's actually extremely serious. In fact, you know how you can go on social media and you can save certain posts? You're like, oh, I'm gonna save that. Like, this is an episode I'm gonna save for myself. Because I go to this place sometimes, and I think we all do. Some people go more than others. And we just feel so down. And I'm going to share with you some tools, some tips of what you can do to prevent yourself from going there. And when you are in that dark pit, what do you do in that pit? How do you get yourself out? Or if you feel like the pit's never ending and the pit's going to be going on for years, decades.
Well, okay, so let's talk about what this pit is that we're in. Since this is a parenting podcast, the pit could be anything for you, right? But we want to focus on that pit of parenting where you feel helpless. You've got one, two, several kids, and you just feel so overwhelmed. You don't have enough money. There's all these bills, taxes, and you're just so stressed all the time. And we want you not to feel that way when it comes to thinking about your children, when it comes to thinking about this journey we're on of parenting. We want to make you smile, right? And it's like for some of us, we haven't smiled in a long time. And so we've got 10 tips of things you can do to help. And of course, a lot of the times, I'm going to start off with number one, okay? And then Sean's going to add into some of his. But we were talking the other day, me and Sean, about, what could you do if you feel like you're in a rut, a parenting rut? And as I look around at my friends, family, people maybe my age, maybe older, maybe younger, just becoming parents. A lot of us think we're on this journey by ourselves. And the reality is we're not. We're sharing this journey, but some of us are so private, we don't want to share our pitfalls. And that's what social media, I feel like, is bad, because all people are showing is this beautiful thing when the reality is it's hard to get to that beautiful thing. So my number one goal is you've got to be vocal, right? My tip is you need to be vocal. If you're having a tough time with the terrible twos, voice that concern. You're at a party with friends, be like, gosh, the terrible twos, man, they're so tough. And just, I've got this teenager right now and she just got a phone and she's on it all the time. What you're going to find out is so many other people in your circle and outside your circle are going to have the exact same experience. And you'll be able to share that experience. You could find Facebook groups right now with anything you want, and they are giving each other advice.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And it's really cool to see. My wife will tell me, hey, guess what I found out on the we've got this a child with special needs for anyone that's new tuning in. We are on a specific feed with people who were born the same year with Kinlan, and we notice that they're going through the same stuff that we're going through, not being potty trained, the denial. He's
same
5 and still having
age.
these problems, same age. And I'm like,
do they all, for 5-year-olds with Down syndrome, you're connected to their parents.
correct.
So when they
And
become
we could
7, you'll be connected.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that is
Yes,
incredible.
it's amazing.
Yes.
It is incredible, because if I were to compare my kid to my 2 typical children, it's way different. The way they're aging is completely different. And so I can see that other parents are feeling the same way that we are.
Wow.
And there's some sense of help with that, and they give advice. And so I just want to say, guys, you got to be vocal. You don't have to do this by yourself. Don't feel ashamed if you found a dirty magazine. Remember those days under your kid's bed?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like it's important for us to share some of these things so we can help each other. Go ahead.
No, you're talking about what it means to be a human being right now. We are not created to be separate from each other. We are not meant to be alone. We are not meant to be alone. We are meant to be interwoven with each other. Now, we have some problems to get through because many of us grew up in a home culture, or your heritage, family culture is telling you, don't share your feelings. Don't be vulnerable. Right. It's embarrassing. You'll shame the family. You'll be weird. No one will look. And so for you to do our tip number 1, you are going to have courage, and you're going to have to find safe people to be vocal with. And here's some good news. There's people out there. They're everywhere. Mm-hmm. They are everywhere. You have to find the courage and the perseverance to go find them. Isn't that right, Jordan? Don't you agree?
Yeah.
There's good people who care about you, who want to connect with you. They're everywhere.
They are everywhere. And if the point of being vocal is you right now, you probably don't think they're everywhere, but by being vocal, you will find them. They will stand up. You'll be like, oh, there you are. It's like a teacher asking a class. Who knows the answer to this? You raise your dang hand.
That's so true.
It's hard for us to figure out who's going through the same stuff as we are, because a lot of people don't share these things.
When you're in that dark pit and you're all alone, you look around, you don't see anybody, and you feel like there's no one else out there. But it's just not true. The truth is that it feels good to be in a pit with someone else and invite them into your pit. If there's community in those pits, and that's how we help each other get out of this. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to entitle this podcast episode something like, when you feel hopeless, overwhelmed, discouraged. But another way of looking at this episode is this is just a guide to a parent's mental health. We're not going to title that, but it could be titled this. It also could be titled, how to have healthy mental health as a parent.
Yeah.
This is for everyone right here. This is so good. So, all right. So here's number 2.
My number 2 goes with number 1, because you could be vocal.
Yep.
And people could be hearing what you're saying.
Right.
And they'll be like, yeah, well, boys will be boys, or yeah, terrible twos, they suck, and you're like, well, shoot, I'd like some advice.
Oh,
so my thing is like,
so
after you be vocal, be like, hey, do you have any thoughts on that? Like, do you have any advice for me?
Right.
Because that's taking the step of like opening up the gates. Because if someone tells me something, I won't want to pry, right? And sometimes I will say, is it okay if I give you advice on that? But most of the time I'm like, well, I got to be cool right now. I shouldn't say anything. She's like, man, dude, that sucks, But the reality is like, after you are vocal, seek advice, and especially those people who who have gone through it.
Yeah, find older mentors, older people. And if you're like, where do I find these people? Well, they're out there. Go and find them. Go to parks. Go to a church. Go to a small group. Go
hold up
and
a sign on the corner of the street.
Yeah,
it says, "Hi, I need help with XYZ."
Here's another idea for you. Here's another idea for you. I'm going to ask you a serious questions. I think I already know all the answers. If you have a serious electrical problem in your house, are you going to try to do it yourself, Jordan? Or are you going to hire an electrician?
Great question. I'm going to go to YouTube and see if I can do that stuff first. Okay. And then I'll hire an electrician once I realize I can't.
All right. Once you realize you can't, are you going to shock yourself, and or are you going to hire an electrician?
Right. You know what? No, I'm going to hire an electrician.
If you have a serious car problem, are you going to try to fix it yourself, or are you going to take it to a mechanic?
Yeah, I'm going to probably take it to a mechanic because I'm not that good.
If you have a serious medical problem, are you going to try to solve it yourself? You're going to go to a doctor or somebody who has experience with that.
I sense a theme here.
There's a theme.
I sense a theme, Sean.
Right. So here's some good news is that we all buy things all the time. We all invest all the time. We invest in things like Netflix, AT&T, Verizon, Disney Channel, socks, hair, nails.
Sucks. Yeah.
We buy things all the time. So when you're thinking about your mental health, make it a part of your normal budget, your normal home culture, to invest in your time and even your finances in getting your advice that you need, right?
That's really, really wise. And you know what? This is going to bring up a different topic because I've had to come to that realization that like some of the things you might not think is investing in your mental health actually is, like a gym membership, giving that dopamine rush, maybe going to get your nails done. If you're a female, like that gives you time to just decompress. That's important.
Yeah. So this is the thing, so for you to thrive in your mental health and for you to get yourself out of this pit, you've got to be vocal, and sometimes you need to seek advice, and sometimes you might need to have to invest in that advice. Remember, be finding your local therapist or finding a cool online group, or you can join me in my VIP membership or work with me one-on-one. But I'm really pumped about number 3. Here's action step number 3. Should not come to any big surprise. In fact, just to build some more anticipation on this, if you go to any therapist, any mental health, any parenting coach, anybody who knows anything about anything, they're going to tell you about number 3. And it's really fun to talk about it. We've actually have whole episodes on self-care and why it's so key. And if your life, if your parenting life, if your mental health life, if your family life was a pie chart, Jordan, don't you agree? You cannot have a healthy life unless you are really doing good at caring for yourself in self-care. Do you agree with me?
Right. I do. If we're looking at a pie chart, what size of a slice is that, would you say?
Ooh. Let's sit on, because I'm very serious about what I'm about to say, okay? Let me answer that question in a creative way. And then I'm going to ask you a personal question about having a Down syndrome son, okay? You ready? I think that we all need to have regular self-care every day. I know my friend Jesse, he told me once 15 years ago, we were both struggling with our young children, just the coping of being young dads. He said, you know what I've been doing recently, man? Before I get out of my car and come back into my house after work, I'll just sit in my car for 15 minutes by myself and I'll just chill out.
Really?
Listen to music. And that's what he did. I think about whether your thing is golf or yoga or getting your hair done or going on hikes with a dog. I think those are all good things we need every day. But here's what I also think. I think that for some of us, your life's really, really hard right now because your marriage is really hard. Your finances are struggling. You don't like your job. Maybe you got one kid who's just so challenging, or you got 3 little kids in diapers. And so here's some really good advice for you. When your life is really hard, you need more self-care than you normally do. And you need to prioritize it. You need to make that happen every day. What do you think about that?
Right. And it doesn't have to be, I think it's wise. It doesn't have to be expensive either, right? So like, you see people gardening and I'm like, why the heck are they gardening? Well, I talked to garden. They love it.
Yeah.
They freaking love having a green thumb. It's not for me, but it's for them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that brings them joy. Yeah. So it's like, if you've got a list of things to do and you're a list person and you write down everything, there needs to be a section on that list is like having fun, right?
Totally.
Or stuff for me.
Yes.
Right? Like I feel like this life is going by slow, but it's so quick. Makes no sense. Time is weird. Yeah. It makes no sense. You blink and you're like, wow, that was just yesterday. No, it's 10 years ago. Time is so, but we have to make time to have fun or else why the heck are we here? Right. And so I'm very big and like, what can we do that's fun? And I love it when the kids say, want to play? Want to play? Because so many of us want to say no, but we need to say yes. Let's play.
Yeah, and remember what it's like to be a kid and play. I've been playing Yahtzee recently with my 7-year-old. Yahtzee.
Oh, that's a fun game.
Yeah,
Yahtzee's so fun.
It's pretty fun. What's fun is just watching her play and watching her get Yahtzees and watching her count with her fingers. Yeah. So for those of you listening, this is for you. I'm going to read off a bunch of feeling words right now. I give my clients that work with me a whole bunch of tools. I'm going to read off one of the tools. And if you've been feeling a lot of these words right now, well, then I have medicine for you. I have just what the doctor ordered.
Vitamin D? No, what is it?
If you've been feeling abandoned, rejected, alone, lonely, belittled, dumb, anxious, nervous, betrayed, controlled, criticized, picked on, deceived, lied to, mistrustful, defective, disappointed, disconnected, disrespected, like a failure. If you've been feeling helpless or powerless or hopeless or humiliated or embarrassed or ignored or unheard or inferior or invalidated, or you've been feeling judged, or you've been feeling misportrayed, or if you've been struggling with intimacy, or if you've been feeling misunderstood or not good enough or inadequate, if you've been feeling really bored or shamed or ashamed or guilty or taken advantage of or unaware or kind of like FOMO, shut out, unincluded, if you've been feeling treated unfairly, unimportant, unknown, worry, unloved, unwanted, if you're feeling violated or kind of attacked, or if you've been feeling worthless, or if you are feeling so many of these feelings, you feel a word that describes that your cup is overflowing with these negative feelings and you've been feeling overwhelmed. Well, I have some advice for you. I want you to really have more self-care in your life. And I want you to fill yourself with friends, with hobbies, with healthy choices that show care for you. And you're going to see your life change for the better. What do you think about that?
I think you're right. And a lot of people could be saying, well, where am I going to find that? Like, remember they used to have like meetup groups. They might still have those. And when you were in your 20s, or maybe you are in your 20s or, low 30s and before kids, you would go out to these social events and go to a bar and meet people. And then you get older and it might get a little more difficult. So you look for people in your neighborhood. I know it can seem like, where do I find friends at this age? But there's a lot of people that want to be your friend at this age. I'll just tell you what right now, join a bowling league. You know what I mean? Have patty melts together. I don't care what you do, right? Get to a church, and join a small group. Like I always hear the church people come to my small group and I see these people, yeah, we're in a small group. I'm like, man, you guys are all so happy. It's like, yeah, we get to hang out all the time. So there are areas, that you could fit into. You just have to step outside your comfort square, your comfort circle, your little box that you've been in and try something new.
Well said, Jordan. Now, these next action steps are not things you can always do with your physical body or things you say with your mouth. That's what we've been kind of focusing on with the first three. Be vocal, seek advice,
Right.
self-care. So these are things that you can say to yourself. And I do a lot of teaching on this on these podcasts. So if you like what I'm saying about here, you can enjoy lots of episodes on the mind and how to thrive with your mind as a parent. And so here's something that starts first in our mind and then happens through our mouth. If you're really, really hurting in your mental health, you're feeling hopeless or overwhelmed, think about this. Who can you set boundaries with in your life right now? Think of boundaries as like little orange cones that you set up. When we set walls with people, that can be a good thing, but it can often create problems. We build walls not to trap people in. We build walls to keep people out. The boundaries are these orange cones that are light. And we can move them. And so, Jordan, when you think about, those places where you've been, where you're really stressed or overwhelmed, can you see how setting boundaries with some challenging people in your life can be very healthy?
Yeah, but I mean, that can be hard. It could be awkward.
Yeah.
Like if you've had a client previously and you've told this to them, and have they ever come to you and said, well, like, yeah, but I can't, it's family, or I'm not an awkward person. I don't want to create anything awkward. Or if I say that to them, then they're never going to talk to me again.
Right. It's scary setting boundaries. Yeah, this episode's not going to be called How to Set Boundaries. This episode is something else. But doesn't that make sense? If you're going to be a healthy adult, you're going to have to learn how to become good at setting boundaries, saying no.
Right.
Right? I mean, I feel like
saying no.
You're pretty good at setting boundaries. You just had to set boundaries with some of your own family members. You were just telling me off the air.
That was just like, that was not, no, that was just a situation that happened. And yeah, you had to say no in certain circumstances, and it's hard.
Yeah.
Like my daughter is going through a time right now where she's done, horseback riding. She's kind of got to a point where she's a little scared of this giant animal,
Yeah.
and she doesn't like going too
Yeah.
fast, and she loves being around them, but she's like, man, this thing's super powerful, and she has to say no to her coach.
Yeah.
And she's like, but I don't want to say no. And I'm like,
Right.
I understand. Well, can't we just text them?
Right.
No, we should do it face to face, and
Right.
we should say, "Hey, I'm very thankful. I love them, but I'm just and just share your feelings."
Yeah. Here's a couple of boundaries I have in my life, and I want you to think, everybody, what kind of boundaries do you have in your life that are really working for you? And maybe what kind of boundaries do you feel like you need? And maybe you need to go and talk to somebody older or get some wisdom or seek advice from or even a professional about how to improve in boundaries. Now, you can ask me questions about this if you want, but here's a couple of boundaries I have. I do not email with my mom. I talk to her on the phone, but I don't respond to her emails, and I don't email with her. That's a boundary I have.
Okay. First off, I'm like, oh, your mom emails. Like, I don't ever email my mom.
Oh, my mom blows my
but
email
maybe
up,
if you,
dog.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And think about this. I want to
okay,
honor
let me
my
ask you
mom on
this
this
next.
podcast because she might be
Sure,
listening. I don't
of
think she
course.
will to this episode, but what type of emails do you think I've received from this woman where now I have a boundary? It's over 10 years, man. I do not email with her or even text.
And she knows this, I'm assuming.
She knows.
Oh, okay. That's what I was going to ask. Do you text
Not really,
her?
but I love talking on the phone with her. But tell me, take a guess. Why would I set a boundary like that? Go.
Well, I try to tell my people in my circle that over the phone conversations are so much easier understood than a text.
That's good.
Because things get lost in translation.
Right.
And you need to hear inflection. You need, especially if you're trying to say something difficult. So that's
another boundary I have. I do not engage with conflict with anyone via text or email. I have that boundary. I don't do it with my clients. I don't coach via email. I don't advise via email. I only coach in person or voice memos or through a Zoom call. So that's another boundary. But yeah, here's a little hint.
Is that why?
I know it's because I've really not enjoyed my mom's emails. My mom has a habit of sending some very, very, very nasty emails. And I could add a lot of varies to that.
And that's anyone who is, participating in social media and throwing things. You hide behind a keyboard, they say, right? Mm-hmm. So you think this is the idea of hiding, like your mom would never say this to you in person, but it's easier to type it and throw it and look away.
Yeah, so I just don't do it. And now, does my mom still send me emails? She sure does. But right, because that's a boundary. I cannot control her, but I can't control myself. But I just know that for me and my mental health and my family health, it's been such a great boundary for me. And me not engaging with conflict with anyone via text or email has been such an incredible boundary for me. What about you? Tell me a boundary that you have, just putting you on the spot, that's just been rocking for you and your mental health. It probably just comes so natural to you, you don't even think about it.
The thing that's now with me, I mean, this is something that I've learned just being married, is I'm a yes person. So I just want to say yes to everything. Okay. But it's like I've had to train myself. Like I have a new boundary where it's like I can't do that without A, thinking about it a little deeper, and B, bringing in my family now and talking about it if it's any decision.
Yeah, man.
It's like I'm always so used to be like, yeah, sure, no big deal, let's say yes. So that is definitely something that has helped me a lot, because then it gives me time to think through something. Yeah. But one of the boundaries I have, in addition to what you said, is anytime I get creepy messages on Twitter or like, you're terrible, or you said this word wrong and you need to say it this way, I will only respond completely politely with thank yous, appreciate the advice, or don't respond at all. Like you said, especially if it's something really negative. I
have that same boundary. Today, I got about 3 or 4 nasty comments on my videos, and this was in the morning. And it a little bit bothered me. One of them, I started thinking I'm going to respond to that, and I said, nope, I have a boundary. It's just not good. Yeah, it's not the man that we want to be.
It's not good, and you're not going to win anything over that. Like you said, if it was face to face, at least you have dialogue and you can communicate your thoughts. It's hard to communicate all your thoughts on paper like that, or in a tweet or on Facebook.
All right, so here's some tips. for you, for all of us, when we feel hopeless, overwhelmed, discouraged. So far, what we've talked about is speaking up, being vocal. Number 2 is, like Jordan was saying, sometimes you need to find someone who has wisdom in the area and to seek advice. Number 3, self-care. Prioritize that, especially when times are really hard. Number 4 is really becoming good at setting boundaries with people, saying no. Don't engaging in that chaos, saying no. You don't have to go to every stupid party you're invited to. Now, here's a couple of more tools for your mind, all right? Now, we talked a lot about this. What are some things you say to yourself when you're in that place of tension and stress? What are some things that you say when you're talking with your kids and they're driving you bonkers and they're acting out and you feel like you're about to lose it? The most powerful voice in your life is your own voice. So it's a mindset of healthy self-talk. Here's some things, and I could go on and on this topic. Here's a couple of things that I've been saying to myself recently. It's not about you. It's not about you, Sean. This person is upset, and it seems like they're upset at you. It seems like they're taking that on you. It seems like they're trying to hurt you. It seems like they're coming after you, but they're not. It's not about you. This is just about them, and this is good information letting you know where they are at, and that you can now decide how I choose to handle this information. I can respond with love and comfort. I can take a time out. I can just, not say anything. So tell me something you say to yourself.
You know what I say?
Tell me something.
You know what I say? I say, they're kind of hand in hand. Breathe. Or I say, wait.
Tell me about wait. That is brilliant.
So
waiting. More of you need to start saying that single sentence to yourself more. That is only very highly emotionally intelligent people say wait. If you want to be a really dumb, emotionally low, intelligent person, then do not say that to yourself. And listen, that's bold to say. Tell me about why do you say wait and what impact does it have on you?
Because if someone is having a problem and let's say their voice is high, they're yelling, I just say wait, 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 wait. And because what I want to do is I want to jump on top of them and explain or defend. And it's like, then I want them to feel like they can get it all out. And I just stay quiet and I'm trying to take it in and I'm trying to think, how do I craft my response? Do I lead with emotion here and say, I'm sorry, you know what I mean? And as I'm waiting, I can think in my head while I'm hearing and listening of how I want to respond. Because how many times have you had to apologize for the way you handled something?
Wait. You didn't have patience.
Because you didn't wait. I'm sorry, I did. Yeah, wait. You got to wait.
It's so good. Wait. So good.
Yours was good too, man.
Here's two more that I want to share.
It's not about me. Okay.
Don't take it personally, Sean. And I think one of the reasons why, like you might wonder, Sean, Jordan, you guys get crazy stuff written at you on social media. How do you not respond? Well, because I don't take it personally. That person's just triggered or something. Like something that really bothered me today is somebody wrote on my video, does anybody else not trust this guy? Somebody wrote that and that bothered me, right? It made me want to respond. And one of the things I was getting all snarky in my head and I was like, how might I want to respond? And one of the responses would be like, who do I remind you of? And see, that's a snarky response because I'm trying to like psychoanalyze the person. Like, like they, it wasn't.
That's the problem though, dude. That's the problem, right? Is trying to psychoanalyze someone who's writing behind a keyboard. I went to a comedian the other day. A comedian. You guys, everyone knows Pete Davidson,
Pete
right?
Davidson, yeah.
Kim Kardashian's ex-boyfriend, the Pete Davidson SNL. So I wouldn't normally go to Pete Davidson, but he was in Atlanta doing one of those really small shows. It was like, get tickets right now. Tonight you come. There's going to be 40 people and I'm trying new content. My buddy's like, I got tickets. Let's go. I'm like, sweet, let's go. So we were like, literally, you could touch him. But it was cool because he was doing new content. And honestly, I go in, I said, I don't really like Pete Davidson. But you know what? It's a night out. Like let's go. I got a night from the kids. Let's go. Right.
But you're
I didn't. And you know what? But you know what? There was another guy who was vocal there. And halfway through the segment, the guy goes, Pete, I didn't like you before I came here, but I have new respect for you. And he goes,
somebody
thanks,
said
man.
That?
I appreciate that. Yes. And I felt the same way. The reason why is what you're saying. like we are getting to know Sean through a platform or through social media and listening to your videos. We don't know you. And so we are making this judgment, staying behind a keyboard and hitting enter. But the reality is, A, if someone knew you, and B, were to talk to you face to face, it would be a completely different reaction.
That's good. Yeah, because you see the human side. You saw something human,
you see
and
the human
vulnerable
side.
and
You see the
likable
background.
in Pete.
Correct.
Versus what the media has told you. Let me build on that point.
Correct.
Yeah,
and I got to do my own judgment.
Let me build on that point. I'm reading a really good book right now. It's called Unoffendable. I forget who it's written by, but the point of the book is really good. Really, what the book is doing is that the author is helping us see how we have become such an offendable culture, and we are so pissed off at people's jokes, at people's religious choices, at how they're taking this stance or that stance on these hot button topics, or who they're voting for, or this or that. And the author is saying, look, like when this happens to you, does anything good happen? Do you like who you've become? Do you like how you feel inside? Do people like being around you when you're so offended? Do you like this? So like when I say like it's not about you, another thing is don't take this personally. Like I'm just learning how it's okay for my family to be upset, and I don't need to take that on. It's okay for people to be upset. I don't need to take that on. I don't need to make this about me. It doesn't affect my self-esteem. In fact, when I say these things to myself, Jordan, it's not about you. Don't take it personally. You know what happens to me? Is I become more loving.
You get relief.
I feel more loving and relief.
Oh.
I feel more calm. I feel more helpful. I feel more charitable. I feel more empathetic. I feel like a better dad. I feel like a better person, a better teacher, a better leader. I feel more spiritually connected.
That's great. You know, the author's Brant Hansen. I just looked it up. Looks like a fun book to read. But, you know, the way that you can tell yourself this and allow it to, you know, wipe off your shoulders, so to speak, takes skill. It's kind of a talent, Sean. I mean, I've got friends that I know, they're maturity. Like, man, I'm so stressed. And I'm like, why? They're like, well, I just carry the weight of the world on my shoulders. I'm like, why? I don't know. Right. I don't know. I can't get it out of my head. I can't not think about it. And I'm like, that sucks. That's hard because you're constantly taking in news and headlines and you feel the weight of the world in your stomach. Right. Oh my gosh, you're creating a cancer inside of you right now.
It's like you're just giving your power away to this and to that.
To who? To the what? Yeah, correct.
Right.
To
now,
what?
Like, I've been waiting. Everybody who's listening, who's been with us, I've been waiting for point number 6. It's the one that I am really most excited about. So please listen closely because we're going to learn some really cool things from Jordan right now. So Jordan, we've talked about 5 things so far. The last 2 we talked about is just having a mindset of healthy self-talk. And we just really touched briefly on those things. I have a new episode, a podcast coming up called A Parent's Top 10 Thoughts. And I am so into this teaching. I've been teaching it forever. I think that podcast will change your life. So look out for that. It's coming out soon. But Jordan, sometimes when you're in these pits and you feel hopeless, it's because you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, because you have a struggle and the struggle is not going away. You have a problem. And the truth is that there's no fairies here. Like the prayers are not being answered. Like you're not God. This is a long-term struggle or issue or challenge. These are things that many of us have to deal with. Not everybody, but we have these problems, these issues. Don't you agree?
Yeah. I mean, shoot, some of us have these quote unquote problems from when, let's say, a child is born until they turn 18 and can leave the house, right? I mean, these are, you know, we could look at it as like a negative problem, or we could look at it as like a positive problem. It's good to have problems. It's good that we have these things that we have to accomplish in life, or what's the point of worth living? Now, when you're in it and it's really negative and hard and bad, I get it. It's daunting. It's scary, but you gotta find hope. You gotta find a way to look at it as you get to do this rather than life dealt you this. So like for us, when Kinlan was born, we had no idea he had Down syndrome. All through the pregnancy, everything was typical. We did the test, everything was fine. Came out, still fine. And then within like 6 hours, they were like, hey, we kind of need to test him for
Mhm.
something. And then they told us, hey, he might have Down syndrome. And we were like, oh my God. I mean, you can
Yeah.
imagine feeling this pit in your
Oh my
stomach of just
gosh,
like, oh
right.
my gosh, what is going to
Mhm.
happen for the rest of my life, for the rest of his life, for the rest of his siblings' lives?
All right, action step number 6 is so key. Let me just say it real boldly. Speak hope. Speak hope. Speak hope and patience into yourself. Into yourself on a regular basis. You've got to speak hope and patience into yourself. Jordan, tell us a story, man.
I mean, many of us could probably, think of crazy stories in our own lives that we've had to do that. And maybe some of us don't know how to do that. One of the reasons why I feel like you have such a big movement when it comes to like Christianity is because you've got Jesus is that sign of hope in a world we always think about like the downside. That was a complete
Hmm.
reversal of thought process of like, oh, we actually could be happy here. We could live with joy no matter what is thrown our way.
Yeah.
So my story was basically, and I've shared this before, but when my son was born, we had a typical pregnancy. It was 6 weeks after he was, no, I'm sorry, 6 hours after he was born. The
6
doctor's like,
hours.
hey, we want to test him for Down syndrome, and we were like,
Hmm.
what? And in that moment, you revert back to this horrible feeling of like, oh no, fear, right? You're scared of his life. You're scared of your own life. What does this mean now for me and for my wife and for my other kids? Is
Mm.
this something that's gonna tear us down, tear us apart,
Okay.
right? And it could be anything, but for us, it was this. It was all these thoughts going in our mind that were negative, and we were so low and so worried. And then there was a point of holding him and being in this low that something switched in our minds, and there
Mhm.
was multiple factors. Number one, the nurse was the sweetest nurse and could have been an earth
Oh,
angel in that moment, and was
oh
like,
my
listen, this is
gosh.
a beautiful child, like you guys are so lucky to have this baby.
Wow.
And then that thought process continued to blossom in our minds, and we became filled with joy, so much so that we
Oh.
were just like so happy
Mm.
that he was here. We thought about, could have this been a gift from Danny's father who had just passed away a year prior?
Mm.
And like, sure, we could have had a typical child, but here was something that maybe was
Ah.
given to us from a spiritual realm that actually was
Mm.
filled more with joy than would have been another typical child,
Oh my gosh.
So we started to have these thoughts of like, we are so grateful to be in this position. And then from that point forward, we have, basically raised him in a way of gratitude rather than this like,
Yeah.
ugh, I have this kid who's more
Oh my
difficult than
god.
another. Or, ugh, he can't do that because he has this. Or ugh, I wish the state would give me more financial aid to help with him because he's not like a typical. Like you could look at anything that way, but for us, we've looked at it in such a positive way that he literally is the light of our family
Oh.
and brings us all together. And so I think with anybody who has that thought of like, oh no, we have to find a way to change our mindset into thinking, okay, why is this going to help me? Because
Mhm.
sometimes you can't see it in that moment. And ultimately, maybe there's no answer right then,
Mhm.
you know?
Right.
But when you look at the long term, and we always look back when we get older, you know, man, that was such a gift. And I
Mm.
try to look at that now with everything. Man, that's such a gift, even if it's hard. Because there's a lot of people like Sean, like they don't know how to feel that hope. They just feel like
Yeah,
they're
they don't know how to
at
feel
rock
hope.
bottom.
They don't know how to speak hope to themselves, right?
You're like, this is going to be okay. This
Right.
is this
Yeah.
is working for
Patience.
your greater good.
Yes. Kind of speechless right now. It's just kind of actually getting emotional listening to your words right there.
I mean, it's hard. There were a lot of tears. I mean, me and Danny at that time had to like look at each other and be there for each other. And there was
Mhm.
worry. You
Mhm.
could see that on your spouse's face. You could,
Yeah.
but then you just look at this precious little
My
baby and you're
gosh.
like,
Yeah.
man, what am I worried about? Like, this is so great. He's here.
All right. I wanna learn more. I want to learn more. I'm a little speechless, and I'm not trying to be funny, but it's not good to be speechless on a podcast.
No,
So let me
that's
muster up
okay.
some
I
questions,
mean,
okay? I got some
and you can
questions.
ask me questions, or you
I
can
do.
like,
I do. I got a
okay,
gazillion, but I'm going to laser in on the point right now because what you've done, you and your family have done is that you've probably become experts in a sense, for lack of a better term, of speaking hope and patience into your life. Because as we were alluding to earlier, some problems they go away, some issues they go away, some struggles they go away, and some struggles are with us for life. Some issues are perpetual and they're not
mm-hmm.
solvable. And so what you've done here is you've given us a glimpse of like how you've spoken hope and patience like into
And
your
that was
life.
right, and that was at that time. So fast forward, he just turned 5 as we're recording his podcast. He just had his 5th birthday,
Yeah, happy
and
birthday,
now
Kinlan. You can see
our
pictures of him
thoughts,
on Jordan's
yeah,
Instagram, everyone. It's
Instagram, yeah,
adorable.
it's so funny. Now we go forward is like, okay, what's it going to be like to get through grade school? But now I think more about the twins. Like, what is this going to look like
Mm-hmm.
as everybody gets older, and
Yeah.
eventually down the road when me and Danny aren't here, because will he still need
Right.
help? And so we
Right.
think about that. So
Yeah.
you're right, it doesn't go away. This is
Right.
something I'm constantly thinking about. It's not like when he turns 18, I'm like, great, I'm done, moving
Right.
on,
Right.
right?
Because that's how a lot of parents do think. They have that done factor. Here's an interesting question. I'm sure this has happened to you. Okay, you're out in public and you see an older man, much older than you, and he has an older son with Down syndrome. And you look at him, and what kind of thoughts come up for you when you look at that
It's
family? What do you think? And yeah,
usually when I see that, I get this sense of beauty and love and joy that comes with that, which is interesting
yeah,
because you have a father and son, and there's videos you could find of like someone with Down syndrome taking a flight, left his family for the first time. He's an
I
adult.
saw
He
that
gets back,
video.
and all he wants to do is
Oh,
hug his dad. You know what I mean? You're just like, oh my gosh, this
that
is
was
so
like 2
cool.
years ago when viral.
Yes, so good, so
Oh,
good.
so good.
But it's almost like when you're at the club, and you look over and someone has like the same drink as you or something, and you like nod, like, yeah, this is what it's all about. It's like when you see someone with a kid with Down syndrome, you look over and you're like, yo, I get it, and you
Oh
it's so funny.
my
Like
gosh,
we run
my
into
heart is
someone.
bursting.
It's so funny.
Oh
We
my
went. We were at the park.
gosh.
We were at the park, and someone else had a kid, and it was like flies to a light. Like we went right to each other and we
Yeah,
just started talking because you have this shared experience that other people don't have.
right.
That again, this goes back to being vocal, right? Like you are going through something that someone else is, but they
Hope.
don't know that unless you share your experience or you be vocal about it. And that was one of our tips, like try and be vocal. So for us, you can visually see it, but then it brings in this like new friendships, like immediately. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Um, I watch a lot of parenting videos on social media, and recently the theme of the videos that's been popping up are one of the themes of how careful we need to be as parents because the parental voice can become a child's inner voice. Have you heard that before?
Well, no. Wow, that's
So
deep.
yeah, think about that. There's a lot of videos. So that's not a fact. That's a proverb. And so we have to be careful. So here's what I'm thinking right now is we as parents, we want to be hope dealers. We want to be hopeful. And we want to have a hopeful voice to our children. And that only starts by having a hopeful voice inside. Because if we have a hopeless voice, we're going to go around thinking like, oh, I can't be happy in this marriage.
Right.
Oh, I'm
How are we
never
supposed
going to
to
get
be
through
hopeful
this.
to our
It's just
kids?
another day,
Yeah.
another day in this job, or I need more money, or yeah, no one loves me, or here we go again. And that is going to rub off on our kids. And that might become our kids' inner voice. But here's some good news. If that proverb is true, if we can just become these patient, hopeful voices in our kids' life, it's going to rub off on our kids,
Yeah. I mean, when they're
You're
young,
rubbing
you
off on
always
me
say
right
like,
now.
when they're young, you always say like, hey man, what do you want to be when you grow up? You could be anything you want.
Yeah.
You can, and they play imagination and it's great. And then as they get older, it's like the world gets its grips in us and then we don't think that way anymore. And we limit ourselves.
Right. And this is partly why people love spirituality, why they love their faith, why people love Christianity. It's why I love Christianity. It's because why I love the Bible, because it just is a story of darkness and a dark human choices, and it's a story of a faithful, hopeful God, and it's a love story. Here's something. Have you seen the movie Evan Almighty by any chance?
No, I was in Bruce. I never saw the sequel.
Oh, okay.
Didn't
Yeah,
see
Evan
Evan
Almighty was the sequel to Bruce Almighty, starring Steve Carell. It's on Netflix right now, and I watched it with my 7-year-old. And I can tell you, it's not a good movie. Like, in fact, when, even when Steve Carell was on that comedy show with Zach Galifianakis, Between Two Ferns, Zach was roasting him how bad it was. And it's a really bad movie. But if you're ages 10 and under, it's a great movie. It just should have been marketed as a total kids movie because there's lots of animals. It's like a kind of a take on Noah's Ark. And here's a couple fun facts about that movie. It's starring Steve Carell, but you know who's also in this movie is Lauren Graham. Do you know who she is? All right. Like, I'm not surprised you don't know her because pretty much every woman that we know probably knows who Lauren Graham is. So Lauren Graham is the actress from Gilmore Girls.
That's
and she was also in Parenthood. And if you're like a 30 to like 50-year-old woman, then like Lauren Graham, you love Lauren Graham, you were raised on Lauren Graham, and now because Gilmore Girls is so popular, Lauren Graham is just like this, becoming a legendary actress. I thought to myself, if Lauren Graham, she was not in the show This Is Us. She was not in This Is Us, or maybe she was.
Okay.
But if she was in This Is Us, it'd be like the trifecta of like, mom, white woman mom shows should be everywhere. But here's what happens is in this movie, the character playing God, who's that guy, who's the famous black actor with that incredible voice. Oh my gosh.
Oh, Morgan Freeman.
Morgan Freeman towards the end of the movie. Lauren Graham had left her husband, Evan, because he was acting all weird. He's building an ark. And God comes up to this actress and he says something like this. We should play the quote, actually. I saw my producer put it in. He says, I'll call her Lauren. Did you pray for your family to be closer together? Because they had just moved to a new house. She said something like, yeah. And he said, the way God works, and she doesn't know he's God, is that if you pray for more courage, God does not just give you courage. He gives you opportunities to be courageous.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Okay. That's good.
If you pray for more faith,
you want more money.
He doesn't give
more
you
faith. Yeah,
more faith.
Okay.
He gives you opportunities to be more faithful. And if you pray for your family to be closer together, He gives you opportunities for your family to be closer together. So this is why, when we speak about hope, when we speak about patience, we're just thinking and we're speaking about, the unseen and about goodness that is not present in that moment. We can't see it right there, but we can visualize it and we can believe in it and we can build our lives on it, on hope and on patience and on goodness.
I heard something recently that someone was talking about that same thing, but they related it to seasons.
Yeah.
If you can just say to yourself, this is a season, just like any season, it's going to move past.
Yeah.
And that season could be hard.
Yeah.
And you will move on. So you can look at it as like, this isn't going to last forever.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. Now,
and the way you're looking at it's not going to last
That's
forever.
Actually a really good transition to action step number 7. Here we are. Parents' mental health. Action step number 7 is do not give your power away. Do not give your power away. Let's explain. Let's give some scenarios just from this episode. What would it be like for you to give your power away? And so you, as a dad, you can only be happy if your 5-year-old son with Down syndrome is happy. You could only be happy or joyful if your twins were not fighting. You could only find joy in your life if you had the perfect job with the perfect salary.
I get it. So you're basically putting your happiness in other people's control, right? Whether it's your job, whether it's your kids, they're deciding it for you. What you're saying is don't let other people be the deciding factor for you. You be the deciding factor for yourself. No matter what the outside forces are happening, you can still choose. Is that what you're saying?
I'm absolutely saying that. And, one of my favorite people who taught me this story are the inmates of San Quentin prison, right near the Golden Gate Bridge in California. I've told stories in this podcast before about how I started a basketball team inside that prison It's been featured in ESPN, Wall Street Journal, and all these other good media outlets. And I learned from prison inmates, from murderers, from killers, from violent offenders about how you can find joy in really, really tough circumstances. And this is not like they invented this. Of course, this is a human truth. We find this in our spiritual books in our Bible. But isn't that true, Jordan? Can you find joy and contentment during tough times?
In it. Yeah. Yeah. If you look for it, right? Even in like the chaos of a storm, think about just you could find joy in just about anything, even when you think all is lost. What was your reaction when they told you this, coming from someone in a prison telling this to you? Were you
Well, I don't
like,
walk around and be like, hey, I'm joyful. I'm joyful. What's your name? It was
of
like me
course not.
I spent 12 years in prison, going in there once a week in the beginning, actually twice a week.
And you learned this.
And
Got
just
it.
by
Okay.
rubbing shoulders and playing them and chatting with them afterwards. And of course, I wasn't like, that was the first time I ever heard about that. But I was like thinking, like, if somebody locked up in prison can find joy and peace and harmony in their heart, then what does that say about the rest of us? Right? Sometimes I'll poke my clients, whether they're parent clients or teen clients, and say, let's go. You'll get a kick out of this one. Let's pretend you're a teenager. So you're telling me you just got a new Xbox. Your parents are married. They love each other. You live in $1 million house. Your fridge is filled with food. You like your school. You have 3 good friends. And you can't find joy and contentment in that situation. What is going on with you? What is rolling on in your mind right now? Just like poking him like that.
Yeah.
Well, you just told
painting a reality.
Well, you just told us an incredible story 5 minutes ago about how you found a situation that could be a big shock or a big challenge.
Oh, it was.
And you turn it into joy.
It was a mindset.
Because your mind.
It was a mindset.
Tell me something else. How do you, in your life, tell me something you think about when you look at a challenge or stress with your kids or family or just in job. And what do you say to yourself to turn that, to not give your power away to that person, to that challenge?
To me, I think about like a timetable. And so when I'm going through a challenge, I look at a timeline in my head and I'm like, well, I'm not going to be here forever.
Yeah.
They're not going to be here forever. Yeah. They're not going to be this age for that long. So this is only temporary. So again, I go into the whole like, enjoy it while you can, because in 5 years you will no longer have people yelling at each other on Christmas Eve.
Oh my gosh!
Because they will be out of this
house. Oh my gosh! Right.
They won't be
so
here
good. That's what one of the hardest parts of parenting for me is the bedtime routine, and we're still in the thick of it with my 7-year-old. And something I've been saying to myself, I actually made a social media video about it, is this: instead of saying I have to do this, I have to put her down, or I have to do this bedtime routine, I have to do this, here we go again. Instead, I train my mind and I say, I get to put a sweet little second grader to bed. She wants to be tucked in. I even said to my wife recently, she's like, Sean, none of her friends are getting tucked in. Like, you don't have to put her down. I said, you're right, I don't. But she's only going to be 7 for a little bit longer. Like, this is my last child that is going to ask me to tuck her in. Right.
That's a good way to look at it, my
It's
friend.
my 3rd child, man.
That's a great way to look at it.
My teenagers don't ask me to tuck them in. My 19-year-old moved out and she's rocking. All right. So let's go to point number 8. All right. This one's dicey, right? All right, Jordan, give us some words on this. What do we do when we're in that pit of hopelessness and overwhelmed, discouraged? Will you make a commitment to not do self-medication with substances, drugs, alcohol, pills, screens, vices, gambling, extramarital affairs, pornography, cheating, stealing, breaking the law? You make a commitment that you draw a line in yourself. That I am in a vulnerable spot right now to do some acting out and to do something to make the pain go away. And I cannot do this. I have to draw a moral line. I can't play with fire. What do you think about that?
I think that's good. I mean, I think if people are wise enough to come to that conclusion, it's like I think about people in my life who have been like a smoker,
Okay.
right? And they have this habit of putting something from their hands to their mouth,
Mm.
and they're like, well, I can get rid of the smoke, but I just the habit of
Mm.
having this at this time has been very difficult. So what do? They trick their mind into to putting sunflower seeds in their mouth. They grab a sunflower seed and they do the same motion,
Yeah.
but it's with something else. So maybe if you are in the habit of grabbing a beer, or 20,
Yeah.
or
Or 3 or 4 glasses of
going
wine.
out,
Yeah.
whatever it is,
Gambling.
whatever the negative thing is that you're talking about, can you trick yourself into do something different? A lot of people right now are talking about these dang cold water plunges, or the
Yeah.
sauna, or working out,
Yeah.
or do something that is going to give you the addiction,
Yes, the
but
dopamine.
the positive addiction. Yeah,
Yes.
do the
Do you
positives. Look for
do you do
positive
cold
stuff.
water plunges? Do you
No,
Oh,
I
would you?
don't. Dude, I think it was Christmas. My wife got me one. I'm like,
Oh, one
what
of
the
those
heck is this?
inflatable
She goes, oh,
ones.
it's yeah, and I'm like, absolutely not.
Oh
Get
my
this out of
gosh,
here.
it's
I'm not
so
doing that.
painful. So
I
painful.
bet. I love the sauna though, man. The
Sauna.
sauna makes you feel
Oh. Oh, I
amazing.
can't wait to get a sauna. We had a social media deal for a sauna and a cold plunge. And then, yeah, it was like
What?
the most
That's
expensive
cool.
coming to the house. And they were like, yeah, we worked with other big creators. We want to give you this for free. And then true story. And I was getting all hyped. I started putting a spot in the yard for it. I was digging it out with my friend. And then my one of
Oh,
my best friends, Josh, he had recently got that same cold plunge you got, an inflatable one. And so we're like, let's go over to Josh's. Let's go practice. So let's have a big party at Josh's. And there was 8 of us. And we put it on our social media just for fun. And we all got in the cold plunge, right? Like a party. Pretty sounds good, right?
sure. How'd that go?
Well, guess
How'd
what? It
that
was
go?
good. And I was like, oh, I can't wait to get like a bigger, like, the wooden ones.
Yeah,
So
the
we
bigger
get
one.
contacted
Yeah.
by the company that we broke the contract and the deal is off because we
You
didn't
broke the contract because you posted that?
my wife and I didn't read the contract closely, and now we were doing cross promotion with a different brand, right?
Oh
Right, you get it?
no, dude,
So
that
we lost that
sucks.
deal.
Read the fine
We,
print. I
we
love
lost
that.
that
That should
deal.
be tip number 8 or 9. Read the fine print.
So yeah, it's about speaking to ourselves like, hey, just because it feels good, it does not mean it's good for me. And just drawing that fine line between true healthy self-care is good for you. It's good for your spouse. It's good for your kids. And then there's that line where you
True.
cross that line and it might be good, feel good for you, but it's not good for anyone else. And so
Very
this
wise.
is just something that the human condition needs to be aware of and it struggles with. And if you've had trauma in your past, then you might be at a greater
It's
risk
easier to
for being
right.
connected or bonded with these things. All right, so let's go to our last 2, man. We're our last 2. You ready?
Yep.
I think that let's talk about control for a second and give me your thoughts on control, because when things are really, really hurting, I think one of the things the human condition grabs for is we want control. We want to control. We want to control our kids. We want to control our spouse. We want to control our situation. We say, we need you to do this. I need you to do that. Stop doing this. Can you please just do this? We kind of control. Does that sound familiar? That's what humans do.
Yeah, and I think what happens is when people feel out of control, they will do something to get that control back. And it could be completely different. If you feel out of control in your marriage or out of control in your parenting, you immediately go to cleaning mode and you start
Yes.
cleaning, or you immediately go to doing something with your car. I got to you got to
Yes.
because you have to feel that control and you're not getting it in one thing,
Yes.
so you're looking for it in
I
something
think
else.
you all are going to love points 9 and 10. Point 9 is become comfortable with being uncomfortable and just accept that you are not in control here.
Dude, that's so hard. That is so hard. That is so hard.
I know.
Because we want to control our
Don't
life.
we?
We want to control our path. We want to,
Don't we?
we had this idea of controlling our kids, or at least
Mhm.
guiding them in a way that is more controlled. And then they go off the path and we feel lost. We're like, wait,
Right,
what the
right.
heck just
Right,
happened?
we want to control who they hang out with. We want to ground them. We want to control their screen time. We want to control our spouse.
So how are we supposed to comfort ourselves when all is lost? Say these things, speak hope, but like, I'm supposed to be okay with being out of control?
Well, you are okay with being out of control. You don't control me. You don't control your kids. You don't control your spouse. Do you control these people? Do you control your bosses at your job?
No, if I think about it that
Right.
way, no,
you're
right.
You don't.
I don't.
We already do. We're not in control here. The only person we can control is
Yeah.
ourselves. So How are you doing it? Tell me your secrets. How are you doing? What's your secrets to being a joyful, happy, content man who's very influential in this world and sharing so much goodness in the world, Jordan? And yet you don't control anyone. What's your secrets? How are you doing that?
I don't know. I don't know. I've never thought about
But
that.
isn't it cool to think about that? Like
I've never thought about it. It's like I am completely out of control when I feel like I am in control. But you're right. I'm not.
none of us are.
I'm not. None of us are. That's a good point.
I think for some people, maybe that's really scary. Oh my gosh, I can't
Even
control
if,
this
you know,
person.
I'm just thinking about this right now. Like, even if you think you are in control, then you start thinking about like, well, then we're on this big planet spinning at thousands of miles an hour, rotating around this sun in this crazy galaxy where there is no control out there, right? So you're so right. Like, even if we think we have it all under control, you don't.
I just think this is just another form of good self-talk. It's acceptance that I need to accept my circumstances, whether you're a prison inmate or you're in a challenging home situation, or does that mean you have to accept every situation? Of course, I'm not talking about accepted every lame job, every lame invitation to a party. You can't accept abuse. I'm not talking about any of that. Come on, guys. I'm just talking about I think finding joy and contentment. You got to go through this path of acceptance. You got to walk on that path. And do you agree?
Right. When I found out my son had a disability, I had no control over that, and I had to accept that. I see what you're saying, and I did. I came to that acceptance, and then it was like a weight lifted off my shoulders.
Even like the 5 stages of grief, I believe the 5th stage is acceptance, and all the other stages have to do with bargaining, anger, shock, and so how can you get through grief?
That makes sense.
Part of the way you get through grief is acceptance. This is happening to you.
That's
and
good.
You have no power over it. And this is why the 10th is, I think, all encompassing about all these 9 things that we've done, I think builds to the 10th point. How can we, when we are in that pit of hopelessness, despair, discouragement, it's a great scene. And I think the greatest movie of all time, Forrest Gump. It's a great scene,
man. It is a great movie.
The scene I'm talking about.
I know every scene. I love that movie.
It's such a great movie. What do you feel inside when you saw Lieutenant Dan on the boat, Bubba Gump or Shrimp? Bubba Gump Shrimp, and he has no legs, and he jumps into the water, and he starts swimming towards the sunset.
And
he's doing a back pedal, and the sun is setting over that beautiful Atlantic Ocean, and you hear Tom Hanks' voice with that accent. It says something like, says something like this. Oh, I wish I could quote it. I think Lieutenant Dan found his peace with God. Remember that scene? What do you think is happening there in that scene with Lieutenant Dan and Forrest? What do you think's happening?
I mean, shoot, that was kind of an epiphany for Lieutenant Dan in that moment, because he had lost his control. He had lost his legs. He had lost his job. He felt no worth. He hit rock bottom. And there was this guy there that was like, I'm still here with you, man. Let's go do this. And during the chaos of the storm, he stood up to it. And then he finally came to a realization that like life is beautiful and that he needs to enjoy what he has. Because up to this point, he was just depressed and bummed out that he either didn't die in combat or lost his legs. That is a good analogy. So he came to accept where he is and appreciate what he has.
Talk about a character arc. You see this man who is, the first time I think we see him after the accident, he's with like these girls. I don't know if they're prostitutes or if they're just dating. He's using drugs and alcohol. He's an angry person. He's not a nice person. He's an unloving person. He's a wounded, traumatized person. And then you see this man full circle, and he's at peace with his circumstances. But more than that, he's just not at peace. He's loving. He's a loving man.
Yes.
He's spreading the world with love now.
Yeah.
So point number 10 is,
that's good, man.
Set our goals on what's true and what is true and what is available to all of us. I like that. I like how I phrase that. It's available to all of us, that we can find a deep inner peace and find love, and we can be loving despite the storms of our life.
I mean, because a lot of people will say life is hard, and it's true. Life is hard. I don't know where there's a handbook that says life was supposed to be easy. You know what I mean? And I get it's easier for some people than others, but the reality is it is hard. But you can come to that acceptance and still enjoy the
Yeah,
process of being alive,
yeah, that's
right? I
good.
mean, think about those that aren't or didn't have that opportunity, who left too soon.
We don't talk about our faith or spirituality very much on this podcast, but one of my favorite quotes, I don't know where it is, somewhere in the Bible. I think Jesus is talking, and he says something like, in this world you will face many troubles.
Yeah,
And he's just letting us know, like, this world is a painful place.
it's full of it.
But there's a comma there. In this world you will face many troubles, but take heart. I've overcome the world. And I think what the message there from Jesus is a message of presence. It's a message of hope. And whether you think about Lieutenant Dan, everybody think for a second about someone who's just a very loving person. They're a loving person, but their circumstances are tough. But what have they done in their minds to find peace in their hearts despite their circumstances? But not just peace. They're not just like some monk who's hiding out in a cave in a hill. But the opposite. They're walking around and they are smiling at people. They're sharing with people. They're generous. They have accomplished, I think, something that I think I would like to accomplish. I would like us all to be. Can you imagine a whole world of people who have found inner peace and contentment despite their circumstances, and now they are loving people?
That's who we need to. That was one of my tips of speaking out and asking those older than us how they did it, right?
Yeah.
They figured it out. I would love to figure it out, right? Some other people who haven't figured it out, who are seeking to figure it out, ask. And everyone's story is going to be different. This is when I came to my conclusion. This is how I figured it out. Well, I had a near-death experience, and then this happened. You know what I mean? Everyone's got that story.
I'm very thankful for you and for your wife, and I'm thankful for Kinlan. I'm thankful that he's brought so much hope and love and laughter and joy into this world, and that you, in a sense, are like a hope dealer. You're like a megaphone, Jordan. You're like a teacher. You're just like a cheerleader, encouraging us all with your stories and your antidotes. So I'm thankful for you.
Oh, that's nice, man. Thank you. I'm thankful for the opportunity to have a child with special needs. I'm thankful for every other parent who takes that challenge. And in fact, I could say I'm thankful to every parent out there, because I know it's hard. These kids, they're tough, man. They can be bratty. They can talk back. I get it. But they are a gift, and there's something in them that's supposed to teach us too. So I'm thankful to all you parents, and be open to receiving some of that knowledge.